Hey, Dad.
Hi, Seth. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thanks.
Thanks for doing this. So, just want to find out more about you. Things. I think I go through life not really understanding your viewpoint too much. So,
Mhm.
hopefully, can hear your story. Could you tell me where were you born?
Yes, I was born in Georgetown, 107 Corner Street, New Donkey, Guyana, South America.
And you were born in a family of a lot of kids,
Oh,
a lot
yes.
of families. Could you tell me what your family was like?
Yes. I have 10 brothers and 3 sisters, out of which a few passed. I'm about 7 or 8 child in the family. My eldest brother lives in the city. He teaches and he make sure that we all follow education. My father makes sure that this happens. He created that atmosphere to leave him in the city, and he moved the rest in the country to work on the land, to cultivate sugar or rice. In those days, we started with rice. So he taught us how to plant, how to mill, and so on. My mother, on the other hand, teaches the young generation how to sew. And that was also a sort of an income for the family. The kids were taught to work on the land, to grow vegetables, to be self-sufficient for fishing, for gardening, and so on. And my father also, when the rice industry was not in demand, he would turn into butchery or tailoring. Tailoring was very fruitful in those days because he made clothes for the people that works in the sugar plantation or the rice industry, which generate the next income for the family. That's how we were able to survive under the British system.
British system.
Right.
So, Guyana, obviously, colonial country, right? Under
Yes.
British rule.
Right.
What do you know about the history of uh,
British?
Guyana and Britain,
Oh,
right?
since we
Interaction.
were a colony, the British had a lot of influence on us. For example, education, our culture, our tradition. For example, uh, in some school there was some sort of not. I would say you had to be a Christian to get in the good school to have good education. It wasn't fair in the system, but in order to survive, we abide by those things. But we went to secondary school, which was a public school, yet we were able to excel. And that had a lot to do with my parents, my brother. They instilled in us that we must learn this and learn that to be competitive in this world. And they make sure that education was our number one priority.
So the good schools I thought were Christian based.
Yes,
So how did you get? How did they know you just had a? Did you have papers that said you were
you had
what
to
faith
be
you were?
you had to be Christian for sure. We were Muslim,
Mm-hmm.
so if you're Muslim, you deny certain privilege. For example, getting into a good school or getting a loan or so on. Like my parents were able to prepare the land for sugar because of working with the community. In those days, you couldn't go to the bank or we couldn't go to the bank for loans. We had no collateral. So they grouped themselves together and they threw boxes. Within few people, they were able to raise a few dollars or $1,000 to undertake whatever enterprise they may have to build, to prepare the land, to construct the home, or to do any expansion within the group. And that's how they were able to survive.
Do you remember what kind of percentage there was between Muslims and the Christians and Hindus while you were growing up?
Oh yeah, the Indians were majority, and that was broke down 50-50% Hindus and Muslims. And blacks were sort of minority. So, and whoever was exposed to Christianity, for example, some Indians were Christians and some Muslims became Christians and were able to have better education. And my brother, since he was a teacher, he and some other people decided to form a school called Muslim College, which helps Muslim people who are denied of a good secondary education to go there to better themselves. And that was one avenue that was open for us. That's where I started my secondary education. And that helped me tremendously. Not only a lot of Muslim people who are denied, or Indians, even Hindus, also attend, who are denied acceptance to the high school that was run by the British. However, though, when we got independence, a lot changes, but it takes time to change. And during that changes, a lot of people suffer, and a lot of them make progress. But that was something we had to undergo.
What year did the independence happen?
I think in the 60s, I can't recall the exact date.
What was? Do you remember what it was like? Was it crazy? Was people a lot of turmoil?
Well, it was rough at first. In fact, the working class of the people were working there as a group. But the British used diplomacy to separate the people. For example, they create what's called a proportional representation. It divides the Hindus. It divides the Indians, which comprise of Hindus and Muslim Christians, and blacks. So people form two separate groups, which is called the PPP, People Progressive Party, and the PNC, People National Congress. The PPP support, or had the Indian supporters, the PNC had the black supporters, and there was the next organization called United Force, which comprises the white people. However, though, the PPP and the PNC were majority, so those were two superpowers in Guyana. But PPP won the election, but they couldn't form a government because they didn't have the full body. So the PNC sided with United Force and formed government, and they got into power. When they got into power, there was a lot of problems. There were riot, looting, a lot of Indians were being raped, robbed, businesses were burned, looted, rioting. People were scared. I remember as a young kid, I had to keep guard at night to protect the home, protect the village. Lucky for us, we were living in a village that was predominantly Indians. So we weren't that afraid of being invaded by another group, provided we keep alert day and night. And in those days, I learned stick fighting. You couldn't use guns were confiscated. So I pick up stick fighting. During the day, rather than go to school, I sleep. And that's how it was until everything calms down. It was a struggle.
So you weren't attending school during that time?
No.
How old were you this time?
I was about 14, 15 years of age.
Meanwhile, the rest of your family is still helping on the rice farm? Or
Right. Well, yes.
what was your father up to? Let's actually start that. Who was your father?
My father is a well-known person in the village. He was pretty young when he got married. He was a leader in the village. He studied Islam. He ran a mosque. He was the imam for years. And he also was a tailor and a butcher. Plus, he was a farmer. But the rice industry was of such, once you plant the rice, you just have to make sure there's proper irrigation and water. Then you wait until it's time for harvesting. During that time, he would turn into butchery or tailor. He would make clothes for people that work on the sugar plantation or the rice industry. And so my mom, on the other hand, would sew these clothing for people to wear. And she also teach people in the village how to sew. And this was also help with family to grow.
How did they meet?
I honestly think it was an arranged marriage going back to colonial times, because when people travel with the boat from India to South America, they create a bond regardless if there were no relationship by blood. But that bond they created, whether Muslim, Hindu, they feel close, they feel like a family. And I think that's how they met. They were probably referred by some member that came on the same boat and they got married. Actually, my father was only 14 years of age when he had his first born. You know, if you look at my eldest brother, people think that's my father. You know, because he's much older than I am.
Do you remember anything about their parents? Did you meet any of your grandparents?
Oh yes, my grandfather, just my father, he doesn't speak that much English, but he was very serious guy, and he believed so much in his religion that he read at least 3 or 4 times prayers a day. He makes sure he's the first one gets up in the morning, and he would read the early prayers, then at night and midday. And he makes sure that he instilled that in us. He doesn't speak much English, but my father understands him, and he lived with us until he passed.
He lived in the rice house.
Exactly, yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But the only thing is, he was not as business-minded as my father. In fact, when my father hired the tractors to bulldoze the land, my father borrowed money from people who created a box where they give money to help. And my grandfather used to tell my father, every day that tractor worked, it cost so much money. That's enough, get rid. But my father keep on with his plan, his business mind. He only went to school for a couple of years. He read books and he looked out to better himself financially. And that caused him to expand and to bulldoze and to cultivate the rice field, make it much more productive and sufficient. That's how he makes his living. That's how he was able to keep all of us. And he also helped people in the village who was less fortunate, who didn't have grocery like rice to eat. He would give them. And if they have marital problems being alone in the village, he would sit down and counsel them. He also he know the Hindu religion because they mix so much together that they understand. And he will talk to them in their language, which is surprising. But he was well known for that. But that's the beauty of growing up as a bond, regardless of blood type, the love for each other, which today is quite different.
Right. Do you remember anything else about the community? Like what did you do for fun? Did you have friends in the village? Were you hanging out with your brothers?
That's surprising. Our fund was in the rice field. My parents say, you, your fund should be with your brothers and sisters. We are not allowed to have neighbors in the street to congregate in the street. For them, under the British system, that was not decent.
Sorry, the British thought it wasn't decent.
Well, the culture,
Culture.
the culture. If you smoke or you drink, that's not conducive to society. That's one thing with British. They were decent. You couldn't curse. You had to dress correctly. You have to carry yourself with a certain dignity and respect. And also, my parents feed upon that because we were Muslim. We had to set an example to the rest. Being my father was a leader, you had to live a life that would set an example to the community, not only the parents, but the kids as well. So we walked on a very thin line. The only time I can be myself, I have to go outside in a different village that people doesn't know me or doesn't know my father. Then my true colors would come out.
Oh man.
That was life. So when it's Christmas, the other people who were Christian would dress up and go to church. And I used to tell my parents, why can't I be like? He said, no, you're a Muslim. You have to go work on the land, go and plant the rice, go and clean the wheat. When it's Eid, which is our festival, then we have fun. But as I grow older, I get wiser. And I celebrate all the holidays. For me, that was fun. I think it exposed me to Christianity. It exposed me to Hinduism. I used to look back, but my parents didn't know about that. But after my mom passed and my father passed, it gave me all liberty to go out and expose myself to these other religions and also to politics. And that was a tremendous learning experience for me. That's where I showed tremendous growth. And I saw in the future for me in Guyana, it seems cloudy, it seems dark. I used to go and spend a lot of time in the library, JFK Library, and a public free library, and read books. And I looked and I said, it would be better for me to leave Guyana for other country. Well, which other country? I choose America because I see there are far more better opportunities for me for growth in America than in England. Because I kind of detest the British system. They were too strict and the caste system was too much. I detest that. As a young man, when I got into politics, I saw the danger in it. And I love freedom, and I love the way the American was. That's the reason I set out for America.
What was the first thing you heard about America? How old were you? What was it?
I think I finished school through politics, and I was getting more involved with countries around the world. There were problems with the war in Vietnam. In America, there was the Black movement, civil rights. Right. But I still think there were opportunities for me in America, and there were more, growth was more there in America than in England. England extract from the colonies all their wealth to fortify themselves. They didn't care about us. And I see America was the first to go to the moon. That itself showed that there's growth, there's future in this. And that propelled me to harness myself, whatever it takes to get to America. And I was the first to leave the family at 20 or 21. I was the first. And it wasn't easy because I grew up in a nuclear family. The family was very tight. But I had to make a move for my own future, I had to break the ice. Maybe because of my exposure to the cosmic world that propelled me to that, because not only was I religiously minded, I was politically motivated as well. Plus, I exposed myself to a different religion in the world. So I said, if I have to leave America, I must equip myself with all this knowledge to prepare me for the future. So when I came to America, I was prepared to do whatever it takes to exist, to survive, rather than go back. Because I didn't want to be humiliated or be embarrassed to my peers. And I think that's what kept me going.
Humiliated by your family members?
Oh, yes. In those days, if you're deported back, it means that you have failed in your mission for a better life. Because when you leave your village, you leave Guyana, you leave to make progress, to make yourself better. If you go back to where you come from, then you haven't grown, you haven't made progress. That's a defeat. You're going back in the hole.
So you said you were the first one to leave. How did that happen? How old were you when you started? How old were you when you realized you wanted to go to America?
Two things developed. After I finished high school, highly impossible to find a job. My first job was I could work on the land. The family was so big, I wanted to get out, to get out the box, so to speak. I have other brothers who are younger, or some who are older, let them survive. I tried to venture out. So I started working at the gas station, putting gas in the car. It wasn't something I was proud to do, but it's something I had to do because I embarked on this mission. I was in bars sometimes when the girls were passing. I used to hide between the cars. Eventually caught me. So that's part of life. Then I tried to switch and move it to electricity. I learned to wire homes. And for me, that was interesting because in our village, there was no electricity. So I contracted myself with an electrician, and I was able to wire our home. And I also went to a place called Canal 1, and I get business for a contractor. So I get a piece of action. But a piece of the action I was getting was very small. The contractor used to rip me off. I didn't know. Used to cover the part that has the money that had been signed. I used to get less than minimum wage. But in his books, he used to put more than he paid me. I didn't care. After a while, I realized what was going on. At the beginning, I didn't care. I was developing a skill. I was bringing some money. And then I realized after a while, I wasn't getting what I was deserved. So I left that and went into sales. Sales opened my eyes, so to speak, because my earning was not in blocks. My earning depends on me individually. So I used to sell vacuum cleaners, electronics vacuum. One of the best experiences I have. It teaches me how to be persuaded, how to make a sale, how to close a sale, how to deal with people in case, how to go to their home, how to gain entrance, build confidence, smile, make eye contact. Regardless of people, you must be able to convince them the change is important. And in those times, people sweep the house with broom and so on. You have to be able to educate them to make the change, the fact which is more healthy, cleaner, easier, and much more economical. I did good, I would say, for a young man, comparing myself to people who are twice my age here, who had cars, who had convenience. I had a bicycle. And they asked me, how are you going to take your bad thing up? I said, I'll put it on the bike and ride. I said, you can do that. I said, yeah. When I was a kid, I used to tow my sister with a bicycle 3.5 miles to go to school. I could do it. Once I was stopped by a salesman. I said, how can you sell vacuum cleaners like that? I said, that's my sales is great in Europe. You have a car and I have a bike. The reason, if I'm sitting on a bike with my vacuum, people are more exposed to me than you. You have yours concealed. Mine's exposed. Sometimes they stop me and make the sales with me. They saw the demonstration before they come close to sale. People see me with the bike, they'll stop and come in and I close the deal. So I think exposure to the product you're selling, believing in the product you're selling, that also helps in making the sale. Having done that, I was able to make enough money and see my way to leave Guyana, and that's how I did. In fact, when I left the country, I still had commission coming to me. One salesman, he was very generous. He gave me my commission money in advance so he can collect my actual earnings. So I could leave the country right away from my commission. And as soon as I got my visa, I fly out immediately. I leave quietly because I was politically involved. I didn't want people to know I was leaving. And secondly, if I come back, I won't be that much embarrassed. But still, my desire was to succeed no matter what it takes.
Did you tell your parents or your father, your brothers, that you were leaving? Did they know?
Oh yes, my father knows. My father knows. In fact, I had wanted to leave 2 years before that, but my father, I lost my mom. He wanted to go to pilgrimage for Hajj. So within the family, and we decided, let him perform pilgrimage, fulfill his duties, then I go. So he did that. And he left the business for me to run. I run this business. My father used to sell rice in Canal No. 1. The people in Canal No. 1, people grow pineapples and different stuff. They couldn't grow rice because of the land. So my father had that business, so I used to run that business once a week on the weekends. So I did that for him. And during the week, I worked in the city.
In Georgetown.
In Georgetown.
How was Georgetown different from the village you grew up in?
Georgetown was beautiful. In fact, I left the country in Georgetown. I rented a room by myself. I didn't know to cook or so on, but I survived. Georgetown was good because I was walking distance to where I worked. The city had everything you need, food, shopping, and so on. In the country, our land was 15 acres land, 20 acres land. There was one house there. Nobody on either side. People just live opposite us. So it's kind of lonely. My family then was dealing with the animals and the birds and whatnot, and live off the land. But Georgetown was more exciting. When they bought land in Georgetown became very busy because thousands of people come from Demerara and West Bank to the city. Why come to the city? The city had anything you need. Grocery, shopping, school, public free library, entertainment, movie house. It was a place to be. And when you're young, that's where you want to be, where you can feel the vibration of life. And I was excited, and that was it. But then it was time to go. I leave without any reports. I just want to get the hell out.
How old were you before we go to how you came to New York, how old were you, how long and how old were you when you were living in Georgetown, just so I can piece it together?
Oh, I lived in Georgetown for about 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were about 16, 17 when you
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was tough. Well, so when I came to New York, I was kind of living by myself. But, well, it was lonely sometimes. For example, on holidays, even my friends who I know used to be with their family. I ended up being in a movie house because that's the only place I could be by myself. You know, there's no one to go to. So rather than feeling lonely home, I sit in a movie house from morning till the evening. And then I go home.
Could you tell me about the day, the full time that transpired when you left Guyana for the first time to go to New York? What did you have? What money did you have? What did you bring? Like, how scared were you? Yeah.
No, that's quite an ordeal. In those days, you couldn't leave Guyana more than 20 or 25 US dollars.
With more, you couldn't leave with more.
Right. That's all the money I had. But I didn't care. To survive, regardless how much I have, was in my blood. So all I wanted was to get passage. I got passage and visa, went to America. I was able to get to school to study electronics because I know about electricity. And in order to convince a student, you have to have acceptance in the school. And I choose electronics. Radio and electronics, those were big in those days.
So you had to say you were going to study electronics?
Oh, yes.
When you boarded? For like
No, I had accepted from school.
in America?
In America. In New York, somewhere. Radio and electronics, I had acceptance. When the school started and everything. With that, I get my visa, student visa to come to New York. I was able to pay the through the money I earned. The passage, I think my brother paid my passage. I said, that's all you do. Pay my passage, that's all I ask. I'll survive. So I booked a flight from Guyana to Trinidad, and then from Trinidad to JFK. In those days, the big flights don't go to Guyana, so I had to use KLM to Port of Spain. Then from Port of Spain, I came to New York. Port of Spain, I booked the plane, 747, big plane. But in Port of Spain, I met someone who lives in New York, and who went back on vacation. He had his green card and whatnot. And he asked me where I was going. I told him, well, he said, you know where you going? I said, yes. I have a friend who would pick me up. He said, very friendly. I told him he lives in Des Moines, Iowa. Not knowing it was so many 100 miles away.
Des Moines, Idaho.
Right. I was so naive. In Guyana, you heard the Burbies and the Rhine, they was nearby.
Yeah.
I remember the immigration officer here asked me the question. He said, you sure your friend will be there? I said, yeah, absolutely. We have buddy plans. I'm sure he'll be there. He stamped my visa and I came. I waited at the airport for about 3-4 hours. Nobody shows up. The airport got very crowded. Then it got quiet, lonely. So after I did see, I called his friend. They gave me his number. It was nice enough. He said, look, if your friend doesn't show up, call me. And I'll tell you where to go. So after my friend that I expected to show up didn't show up, I decided to call him. I called him and he told me what he said, take a taxi and go down to this hotel. At that time, he was living at Manhattan, 45th Street and 7th Avenue. So I decided now to take a taxi. That's all the money I had was $25. So
How much was the taxi ride?
I think it was $50. $50. So I said, okay. I decided to take a taxi. Yeah, I got pushed the door open. And the door opened wide, and I said, wow, this is like James Bond. So I concealed my agitation and just kept on walking. I hailed a cab and followed the direction that this friend of mine this acquaintance I put up at Port of Spain with an address in Manhattan. The hotel name was Necabarca Hotel, 45th Street and 7th Avenue. And that was it.
He picked you up, or you got off at the hotel?
Yeah, I got off at the hotel, and in the lobby, I beep him, and then he picks me up. And he took me in the room. The room, it was pretty late, so I had to sleep there in the night. And he said, okay, you can stay here for the night, and tomorrow we'll decide where you go. And that's how it was.
Was it a big place? He owned this place? Or?
Yeah, he rented the room, but he had other people there.
What do you mean there's other people?
Well, he and his wife had one room, and the next room had people from his village that were sleeping there.
Trinidad.
No, from Guyana.
From Guyana.
Right. And as such, he said, find a space and sleep. It was pretty late, so in order to find space on the floor, I had to go sideways and create room.
Between the people that are sleeping.
Exactly. He helps people who just came in the country. He has a status, and as such, he has people from his hometown, kids who are going to school. Some of them don't have their status, so he gives them refuge, so to speak, or help them out, so to speak. In the same way, he helps me out. So I was lucky enough that I had a place that I could stay the night, because I didn't come with too much money. And that's next day, they took me to get a job. I told them about school. They said, don't bother about school. But still, my interest was to go to school. So I was able to attend school unknowing to them, because this group that I was involved in, they had no interest in school. All their interest in was to work, make money, and send back home.
How big was the room that while you were staying there, they were sharing with these other?
It was 12 by 15. But everybody slept on the floor. There was no beds or anything. So in order to get space on the floor, I had to go in sideways and make room. But I did that in order to survive. For me, I was lucky. I had a place to sleep right in the street.
So how long did you spend staying by this place?
Well, I spent there at least a few months. Exactly how many months, I'm not sure. But I stayed there because I need to find a job. I need to get myself familiar with the place, traveling and so on. And then I was able to move on.
Did the guy request anything? So he took you to find work immediately?
Oh, yes. Well, in fact, after a while, I became the agent for whoever was coming to the country. I used to pick them up at the airport, take them to unemployment center. In those days, I think in 43, there was a big unemployment center for people who work on factories. In those days, the garment factories had a lot of need for jobs. And people coming from Guyana, they know that's one thing the girls learned in Guyana was to learn to sew. So when they came here, that was a good skill for them to know. So they're able to find jobs in factories, sewing jobs, you know. So my job was to take them to these places for the job, unemployment place, and they find them jobs. Because I used to work at night, so I sleep during the day. For me, it was good, and it was better for all of us because it wasn't crowded in the day. In the day, everyone goes to work, and I had room for myself. And that's when I went to school. And after that, I went to work. So when I get home at night, it's about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I find a spot, and then I sleep. By 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, they're all left, and I have a place for myself. That's what survival. I did that for quite a few months. Then I move on, you know, because had I stayed there, I wasn't able to accomplish my goals. Was to go to school and better myself, because in that environment, those people I stayed at used to have fun on weekends. They used to drink and party and so on. They had no intention of going to school, and I had to break away from that. I stayed there, I would say, for 2 or 3 months. I'm not sure exactly, but I had to get out.
How was the guy making? Was he? So they were all paying him something?
Oh, sure, definitely.
So the guy was making a profit by turning the apartment.
Oh, sure. He and his wife had a room by themselves. They had their status, and about 5, 6 of us, or 8 of us, or 10 of us, I can't remember exactly, but people would come and go, so the amount remained constant. We will give them a certain amount every week. In those days, groceries were cheap and all, but still you had to contribute. But your earning was less also. I used to work, at those days, I used to work for a temporary agency called American Girl Service, which used to pay, I think, $4 or $4.75 an hour. They used to pay me, but they were making $5 or $6 an hour for whatever work I did. But what's the temperature? I didn't care. It was still better than Guyana. US dollars, the exchange was great.
Right.
So I was able to cover my expense and save a few dollars. And that's how I existed.
What did you think of New York when you first reached? It must have been crazy when you saw the city. You landed in middle of Manhattan.
Yeah, I came in February 17 or 18, I can't remember exactly. It was foggy, it was cold. I didn't come with warm clothes, I came with just a jacket and a shirt. And it was fog. It's the first time I see fog. It was quite an experience for me, but I think what kept me going was the idea that I have to make it, I have to succeed, regardless of what it is. And being I was young then, I think what propelled me, what kept me going is to succeed, to make it no matter what. And that itself created the energy inside of me to withstand the cold or the hardship, to survive rather than going back home. Because I left to make life better for myself and the experience. America was great. I saw the things that America has achieved, and I want to be a participant in that. And that causes me to take whatever it takes to survive. It wasn't easy, it was difficult, but you got to make some sacrifices in order to survive.
So after you saved up some money from living in that place, what did you do then after that? It's the month number 3, right? They've been there.
Oh, then I moved with different friends of mine in a different hotel, but there was less people there. And I was able to expose myself to different type of jobs. And then eventually I moved to Bronx shortly afterwards. I didn't stay there long because living in a hotel was very expensive. It was too much. The demand was too much. So I moved into the Bronx. It was cheap. I was able to save some more. Then I was able to get a place for myself in Manhattan. I rent a room, and that's how I survived. I went to school. I had a limited amount of friends then because I was occupied with jobs and school, so I didn't have too many friends then. But it took a toll on me. I got sick, and I had to prepare my own food. I had to save as much as I can and also pay for tuition for schooling, which I've done. And I continue like that until things get better. We always hope that things get better, find a new job. And then I started college. I quit that school because to find employment, that was difficult. I went to college instead of community college. And that's where I excelled. Then I moved into bank jobs and I did better. And as time progresses, I look at different avenues where I can make more money and complete myself. Then I went into taxi business. I started doing taxi. Taxi gave me the opportunity to continue study and pay my bills. And I drive taxi because it depends on how much work I want to do. So not interfere with schooling. And that's exactly what I did and was able to accomplish it.
What was the hardest job out of all of those that you had?
I didn't work in the factory because the first job one job I had in the factory was they ring the bell first that to get set. And the second bell is to start working. And you work until the bell rings, non-stop.
Someone's controlling the bell?
Yes, there's a time. Let's say your job started at 8 o'clock. 5 minutes before 8 o'clock, the bell will ring. I mean, get to your position. Then the second bell, that's working in the factory. And the second bell ring, you start working. And you don't stop until lunch or break time, until you hear that bell. That's where I break one of my fingers. If you look at my fingers, one is twisted. I used to work in a belt factory, and I broke this finger.
It's a belt factory, like a
Yeah, you had to put a belt. Yeah. That was some job. I did that until I get hurt. But I didn't have papers at that time, so I couldn't get compensation. So I stopped working there. I still have about 10% loss in this finger. If I had my status, I could have fight and get a couple of $1,000 for this. But I lost out on that. So I stay home and decide to look for different type of jobs, which I did. And that's how I continued. But the thing is, I never get discouraged, disappointed in a job. I always get up, bounce up back and go on. Never give up. No matter what the misfortunes, I keep going. The idea is I have to make it one way or the other. And I think that's what kept me going. For myself, for my family, I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to embarrass my parents if I go back, or my brothers and sisters. I came to better myself, so I was determined at whatever cost to make myself worthy or better.
Looking back, do you wish you did anything differently?
No,
In terms of like, maybe, no regrets.
no regrets.
Every job you worked,
Yes.
worth it.
Every job that I had, I think prepared me. every disappointment mold me to be stronger and to understand the misfortunes in life and prepare me to excel, to keep on going. And I think that helps me to stand the time of dying, so to speak. Thank God that I'm still around. Faith, believe in yourself, have confidence. There are disappointment, but that's part of life. Life is a constant battle. I learned this since I was a kid. Life is a constant battle until death. Therefore, we have to strive as long as we can breathe. And that has been my manifesto until now.
Great. I guess, is there anything else you would like the next generation to know, your grandkids, about you, your story, where you come from?
I think one of the best things my grandchildren, anyone, is to believe in yourself, what you can do. There will be disappointments, but regardless of disappointment or whatever, or misfortune, always get up back and go on. Your goal must always go forward. There'll be bends and ups and downs, but keep on going. Keep on. As long as there's life, as long as you can breathe, there's hope. Never give up. That's my theory.